In today's 360, we'll look at the key features in the world of business, beginning from the forex market, as well as look at the tenacity of the stock market all around the world, the Asian stock in particular, and an outline from a Nigerian perspective. We'll also listen to the ECB president. The Crucible Theatre's famous green burst turned orange at the World Snooker Championship on Monday, its entertainment business fest, when a protester interrupted a match by jumping on the table and releasing a packet of powder, causing play to be suspended. Two Just Stop Oil protesters invaded snooker's most famous arena shortly after play began in two balls and threw orange dye over one half of the base as boos and jeers came from the audience. Both protesters were taken away by security in play while the maze was cleaned up. They protested about oil prices. Entertainment point of view in business. British Prime Minister's wife, Ashata Moti, lost about £49 million on Monday after shares in Infosil Limited tumbled father, Narayana Murthy. The company nosedived on Monday. It closed down 9.4%, the biggest drop since March 2020. While the highlights the gulf between the Prime Minister and ordinary Britons struggling in a cost of living crisis. Still in Europe, President Christine Lagarde of the European Central Bank discusses inflation, interest rates, and the challenges facing Europe's economic recovery. The C. Peter McCullough series on international economics brings the world. Let's hear from President Christine Lagarde of the European Central Bank. Lagarde.
So I decided to accept the idea, and I do that reluctantly because I don't think that it's necessarily a pretty picture, but to accept the idea that we are moving towards a fragmented or a more fragmented world. We might move in that direction, and that as a result of that, as central bankers, we have to look at what the options are, what the risks are, what the scenarios could be. So we have seen the global economy go through major transitions and through a transformative movement, which I will summarize in steps. So we had the pandemic, we had the totally unjustified, unjustifiable and horrifying war of Russia against Ukraine. We had between China and the United States. And as a result of that, the tectonic plates are shifting, and they're shifting faster than we have seen.
That was Christine Lagarde, President of ECB, European Central Bank. Let's move to Nigeria's outlook. Nigeria's crude oil output is to drop as ExxonMobil declares force majeure. The recent increase in oil production follows an industrial action by the company's in-house workers' union. Last year, Nigeria's oil production dropped to around 1 million barrels per day, falling behind Angola due to the departure of companies such as Shell plc and Total Energies caused by extensive corruption and security concerns. Currently, of the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. Still looking at businesses around the country. Glano Nigeria Limited has lost its assets to Asset Management Corporation of Nigeria (AMCON) over a 2.4 billion naira debt owed since 2016. Help of the court after Glano Nigeria Limited failed to cooperate for an amicable settlement. But Glano Nigeria Limited and AMCON have been locked in a court battle since 2016 over the loan which was obtained from the United Bank for Africa (UBA) in 2013. That's the outlook within this. Let's look at other stories. The Nigerian Railway Corporation generated 715.09 million naira in revenue from passengers in the third quarter of 2020. The report showed that the figure dropped by 60.52% compared to the 1.81 billion naira received in the third quarter of 2021. Similarly, it showed that 101.84 million naira was collected in the third quarter of 2022 as revenue from goods and cargoes. This dropped by 7.04% from 109.56 million naira received in the third quarter of 2021. So talking about money, Nigeria's external reserves fell by $112.78 million in 2% of external reserves on Monday showed that the reserves, which stood at $36.99 billion as of the end of January 1st, 2023, fell to $36.67 billion at the end of February 2023 and $35.53 billion at the end of March 2023. At the last Monetary Policy Committee in Abuja in March, the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Godwin Emefiele, attributed the decline in the external reserves to the fall in crude oil prices, and it's quite concerning from a Nigerian point of view. But it would make sense to move to global economy to look at details in data and data expected across the globe, beginning with economic calendar, shown that at the early hours of 2:30 a.m. in the morning, the Reserve Bank of Australia had gave out a minute meeting. By 3 a.m. in China, GDP growth rates year-on-year came out. For the first quarter at 4.5%, previously stood at 2.9% at the first quarter of last year. The consensus outlook was that the GDP growth would rise to 4%, and the forecast was to add other data indices at the next period. Around 7 a.m. this morning, unemployment rates came out. Before looking at what happened in the afternoon, unemployment rates came out for Great Britain at 3.8% for February. Previously stood at 3.7%, and the consensus outlook was to get to 3.7%, and the forecast was 3.8%, and it met the forecast. Let's also look at details of key data release that took place around 10 a.m. and previously at 15.3 index level. Inflation in Canada year-on-year for March last stood at 5.2% and previously 4.3%. The outlook is at 5.2% currently. Let's look at the afternoon period then. Expected data for Canada inflation. Firstly, building permits index was at 1.55 million. The forecast is at 1.45 million, and we'll get to find out what the outcome would be later. Talking about data and economic outlook, US headline inflation is down to 5% in March, a significant improvement on its peak of 9.1% in June. Why that is an unlikely outcome. Let's have insights from Blue Putnam, chief economist of the CME Group.
U.S. inflation is down by more than half from its 9% peak in 2022. Unfortunately, inflation is not likely to subside down to the 2% it averaged from 1994 through 2019, and none of the reasons relate to interest rates. First, globalization. Globalization increased competition and helped to prevent prices from rising at low cost, implying less of a constraint on prices. Second, technology. The arrival of the internet era empowered consumers, enhancing their ability to compare prices and shop efficiently. The advances remain in place, but the gains for consumer empowerment have largely been fully realized. Third, demographics. From the mid-90s into the 2000s, there was a steady supply.
Can the US Fed hit the target of 2% for inflation? That's a question many will have to answer, but that was an outline from Blue Putnam. To Asia now. China's first quarter GDP growth beats estimates. The Chinese economy advanced 4.5% as we saw in the calendar year-on-year in the first quarter of 2023, accelerating from a 2.9% growth in the fourth, above market forecast of 4%. This was the strongest pace of expansion since the first quarter of 2020. Industrial output rose, the most in 5 months, and the surveyed jobless rate fell to its lowest in 7 months. It would be a good time to look at the charts indicating China's GDP annual growth rate. The chart indicating GDP growth rate in China. As of July 2020, annual GDP in China, gross domestic growth product, indicated 3.2%. By January 2021, it went up to 6.5% and 18.3% subsequently, a high in 2021. By July, it had dropped to 7.9% and January 4%, January 2022. By July 2022, it fell markedly to 0.4%, but the improvement began 2.9% in January and currently 4.5%, indicating an improvement in the economy. The annual inflation rate in Somalia rose to 5.7%, and we'll get to talk about it more when we return from this break. Welcome back. It's Business 360 and my name is Blyden Ukem. Talking about global economic outlook and inflation in Africa. The annual inflation rate in Somalia rose to 5.7% in March 2023, up from an over 1 year low of 5.4% in the prior month. Prices remain extremely elevated for alcoholic beverages, tobacco and narcotics in the wake of the Somali government's fight. Concern for many, it came mostly from prices of housing and utilities, restaurants and hotels, furnishing and household equipment, and food and non-alcoholic beverages. On a monthly basis, consumer prices soared by 2% in March, the most in almost a year, after a 0.4% rise in the prior month. It would be a good time to look at the charts indicating Somalia's inflation percent, but further peaked at 7.7% in July 2022, began to slow down, getting to 6.9% as at October 2022, and downward to 5.6% in January 2023. But it began to go up slightly and now 5.7%, indicating a slight rise in the prices of commodity in Somalia, as well as a slight weakness in the currency, $81 per barrel today, recouping some losses from a previous session as investors cheered data showing China's economy grew more than expected in the first quarter, boosting optimism about the country's post-pandemic recovery. The International Energy Agency recently stated that it expects China to account for most of 2023 oil demand increase. The IEA also warned in the same report that a surprise production cut by OPEC Plus will tighten the market more than initially thought, at the expense of commodities and other risk assets. Let's move to the energy market then to see the prices of the commodities, and afterwards the metal market and agricultural market. The energy market has shown a slight negativity currently in the market from 81 US dollar per barrel to 80 US dollar per barrel for crude oil, the US crude WTI, and Brent crude 84 US dollars per barrel, dropping slightly. Let's also look at the metal market this morning, what the outline for gold, silver and the rest of the metals are. For gold price is dropped away from the 2000 mark, but a slight gain this morning of 4.7 points, 0.24% appreciation, and gold price is 1,999 US dollars per ounce. Silver slightly downward this morning, but 25 US dollars per ounce. Copper a little here, a little there, are still gaining 8 points. Iron ore dropping by 2 points. Let's look at the agricultural markets this morning, what the markets are saying in the agricultural sector. So in the market this morning, lumber, palm oil gaining 164 points, a 4.51% appreciation in today's market. Current price 3,804 Malaysian ringgit per ton. It would be a good time to look at 1.1 level. Todd Colvin has more. Let's hear from Todd.
Euro currency opens the week nudging lower. Recall last week we saw the euro getting up north of 110 to 1 year highs as the dollar has continued to struggle. The dollar late last week started to get its sea legs back under it, started moving higher. Today that continued. We saw the euro reaction to that was to move lower. So while the dollar and treasury yields are moving higher, as bank earnings aren't proving to be as negative or as implosive as they could be below 110. Now, what does this mean for volatility?
Thank you, Todd. It would be a good time to look at the perspective of the market this morning, how the market is reacting to all the indices in the morning business, the market. The euro against the US dollar has dropped away from the 1.1 mark to 1.09 mark. 1.09 US dollar equaling 1 euro. For the pound, It's at 1.24, our point mark, or 1.24 US dollar equaling £1, but it seems slightly positive but not reasonable in the market. For the Naira weakens at parallel markets and gains at investors' window. Let's find out Naira's perspective in the market. The US dollar against the Naira current price is 459.92 Naira equaling $1. For the Euro, 0.21% decline. For the pound against the Naira, the international and exchange window is 571 Naira equaling £1. Slight upward movement of 0.488 points. Let's find out how the market also reacting from the black market, the parallel market. The dollar had gained against the Naira from yesterday's 700 rates. For the pounds against the Naira is 923 Naira on the average, equaling £1, and 911 Naira equaling £1 at the selling rate. For the Euro to Naira is 802 Naira equaling €1, and 789 Naira to €1 at the selling rate on the average. Let's also have a look at the cryptocurrency market. The price of Bitcoin, Ether and the rest. Bitcoin, after falling away from the 31,000 mark, went up this morning by 458 points, a 1.55% appreciation. Current price is $29,880 for one Bitcoin. Ether, $2,107 equaling one Ether, upward by 30 points, a 1.45% appreciation. Market is moving quite fast. For Binance, it's upward movement. Cardano also gaining slightly, Solana gaining slightly, and Ripples gaining slightly. Let's look at the global market, the stock market, beginning with the Asian equity markets. Asian equity markets mostly fell today as lingering uncertainties on the outlook for inflation, growth, and interest rate globally continue to weigh about this repeatedly, but it goes on to show how impactful it is in the global market. The world's second largest economy also posted strong industrial production and retail sales data in March, boosting optimism about the country's post-pandemic recovery. The S&P and ASX 200, KOSPI, and Hang Seng indices declined, while the Shanghai Composite fluctuated. The Nikkei 225 index bucked the regional trend, tracking a bank-led advance on Wall Street. But it would make sense to conclude, with this market anyway, Nigerian bourse value crashed to 27.84 trillion Naira as the stock market capitalization dipped by a negative 1.48% yesterday from 28.26 trillion Naira. This represents a loss of 421.07 billion Naira. Let's look at the All-Share Index. The All-Share Index depreciated from 51,893.94 points to close at 51,120.94 points after shedding 773 basis points. Investors traded 226.59 billion shares, valued at 1.56 billion Naira, and 4,373 deals today. Let's look at the top gainers then. 7 kobo per share, the bottom loser. Champion topped the losers table after shedding 49 kobo to drop from 4 Naira 93 kobo to 4 Naira 44 kobo per share. The top trade then, the top volume. Transcorp led the day's top trading with 63.44 million shares, valued at 117.36 million Naira. This gives an outlook to what could happen in today's market in the Nigerian Stock Exchange. This is where we draw the curtain on today's edition of Business 360. My name is Blyden Ukem. Thank you for being a part of it.